All right. Are you ready to take your career to the next level? We're going deep today with 10 timeless career tips straight from Harvard Business Review.
You know what's really cool about this?
Look at that.
They went through 1,000 episodes of their podcast. 1,000.
Wow.
And they found advice from everyone. Business school professors, CEOs,
Really?
even an Oscar-winning director.
That's incredible. Talk about having an all-star team in your corner. It's like we're getting a cheat sheet from the best of the best.
Exactly. And these aren't, those trendy tips that'll be outdated next year.
Right.
This is about communication, leadership, those core skills that matter whether you're just starting out or you're already running the show.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Tip number 1. Purpose-driven career. I think we've all had jobs that felt like just a way to pay the bills.
Oh, yeah.
But what if work could be, I don't know, something that really lit you up?
Well, that's where this idea of authentic life work comes in. Professor Nicholas Pierce says that aligning your career with your values, that's not just about feeling good.
Right.
It can actually make you happier and more productive. There's actually research that shows employees who feel a sense of purpose in their work, they're more engaged,
I could see that.
they're more innovative, and they're more successful.
You know, that makes total sense. Remember that time I tried to be what was it?
What?
Brief, funny story about a mismatched job.
What?
Oh, it was a total disaster. I was so unhappy, and honestly, my work really showed it.
It's rough when you're not in the right spot.
It really is. Finding work that matches what you actually care about, that's a total game changer.
It is. And HBR even included a link to another article if you want to go even deeper.
Oh, cool.
It looks at why this whole purpose thing is so important, not just for you, but for businesses too.
That's so fascinating. It really shows you how personal satisfaction and professional success go hand in hand. All right, let's move on to tip number 2, which I think everyone can relate to. Difficult conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments where you've got to give someone tough feedback or deal with a conflict.
It's the worst.
It can be so tricky, right?
It is. And a lot of times, people try to make it easier. They try to soften the blow.
Right.
Holly Weeks, she's a communications consultant, and she points out that a lot of us make this mistake when we have to deliver bad news. We try to, minimize the issue or sugarcoat it.
Oh, yeah, I do that.
It makes sense, but that approach can really backfire.
Oh, I've been there. Like that time I had to tell my boss about, brief, relatable anecdote about a work mishap. I tried to make it seem like no big deal, and it made everything so much worse.
Yeah, it's natural to want to avoid uncomfortable situations, but Weeks really stresses that you've got to be clear and direct, even when it's tough.
Right.
When you try to downplay bad news, it can create misunderstandings, start rumors, and ultimately, you lose trust.
That's a really good point. Being straightforward might be a little awkward at the time, but it saves everyone a lot of trouble down the road. So we've talked about purpose, communication. Now, tip number 3 gets into this idea of being authentic as a leader.
Right.
But it also says, don't take it too far. So how do you find that balance, being genuine but not oversharing?
That's such a good question.
It is, right?
And Professor Lisa Roche offers some really helpful advice on this.
Okay, good.
She says that while it's great to be yourself at work,
Of course.
if you overshare, it can actually make people doubt you and damage their trust in you.
That makes sense.
Think about it. Your team needs you to be strong, to lead.
Yeah.
If you're always sharing your insecurities or personal problems, it can make people wonder if you can handle things.
It's like imagine your doctor telling you all their fears right before a big operation.
Oh, God.
You'd be terrified.
Yeah, not exactly confidence-inspiring.
Not at all.
So Roche says, be real, but make sure that what you're sharing actually relates to what you're doing. Don't use work as therapy.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Being relatable while still maintaining those professional boundaries. I like it. All right, tip number 4. This one takes a really interesting turn.
Oh.
It's all about reviewing your decisions.
Okay.
We're always making choices at work, but when do we ever actually sit down and think about how those decisions went?
That's so true. We don't do that enough.
No, we don't. So Hazard Lee, he's a fighter pilot, trained to make decisions under crazy pressure.
Wow.
And his advice might surprise you. He says we should do these regular after-action reports, just like in the military,
Okay.
to look back at choices we made and see what we could have done better.
So we can learn from them.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And I think this is helpful not just for the big decisions, but even the everyday ones. Think about a project that, maybe didn't go as well as you hoped. Taking the time to think, What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently next time? That's really powerful.
It is. It's like you said, we don't do that enough.
No, we don't. It's all about turning every experience, good or bad, into a chance to learn. And speaking of learning, tip number 5 talks about this fear we all have, hitting a mid-career plateau. You know, that feeling of, is this it? Is this all there is?
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. It can be a little scary. It's like standing at a crossroads, not sure where to go next. But it doesn't have to be a dead end.
No, it doesn't.
Former CEO Chip Conley has this really cool way of looking at it. He calls it a midlife edit.
A midlife edit.
Yeah. So it's not about throwing everything away and starting from scratch. It's about using all that experience you've gained and that wisdom you've picked up along the way to find new paths that fit you now.
I like that.
Because what matters to you now might be different from what mattered to you 10 years ago.
For sure.
And guess what? HBR even included a link to another article about this.
Yeah.
It's all about accepting and embracing yourself. You're that middle-aged, mid-career you. It is. And I think it's a great reminder that our careers, just like us, are always changing. Instead of being afraid of that change, we can use it as a chance to grow and reinvent ourselves.
Absolutely. Change can be a good thing. Welcome back. We're diving deep into these 10 timeless career tips from Harvard Business Review.
I'm still thinking about that midlife edit. Such a cool way to think about mid-career.
It is, isn't it? But we've got more to cover. So much good stuff.
Okay, I'm ready. What's next?
All right, tip number 6 is all about working with those people who, love to play devil's advocate.
Oh, yeah, those folks.
Always got to push back. HBR calls it collaboration conquering skepticism.
I like that.
And they actually bring up Ron Howard's experience working with Bette Davis.
Oh, wow. Talk about a legend.
Right. And she was known for being tough.
That's an understatement.
But Howard, instead of getting defensive, he turned her skepticism into a conversation.
Smart.
He realized that if you just shut down those dissenting opinions, well, you miss out on a lot.
And you probably make people resentful.
Exactly. By bringing Davis into the problem-solving process, he got valuable feedback and built a stronger relationship.
That's a great example of what we were talking about earlier, that clear communication is key, even when it's tough feedback. Creating that open dialogue is so important.
It really is. It's about understanding that different perspectives, even those that challenge you, can make things better in the end. Okay, tip number 7. This one asks you to think about your career moves in a whole new way.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Forget the corporate ladder.
Really?
What if, instead of chasing the next promotion, you focused on learning and growth?
I like that. Takes the pressure off, opens up possibilities.
That's exactly what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella suggests.
Interesting.
He says to look for roles that'll teach you a lot, even if they don't seem like the most direct path to the top. Remember, he didn't start out as CEO. He was all about learning and making a difference.
Such a good reminder that sometimes those unexpected turns take you exactly where you need to be. I'm loving these tips. Okay, hit me with tip number 8.
This one might blow your mind.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Lay it on me.
It's this idea called integrative thinking, and it can completely change the way you solve problems.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So Professor Jennifer Reel says we often get stuck in this either thinking.
Yeah, like 2 choices, and neither one feels quite right.
Exactly. But integrative thinking pushes you to think beyond those limitations. Find a solution that combines the best of both worlds, something totally new.
Wow, that's powerful. I can see how that applies to so much, not just work.
It does, doesn't it?
It's about thinking bigger, questioning your assumptions, and being open to things you never even considered.
Exactly. Embracing the complexity, not trying to make everything simple. All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something we all struggle with.
Oh.
Burnout. Tip number 9 has some really helpful insights on this.
Yes. I think we could all use some guidance on that. Burnout is so common, especially now.
It really is. And Professor Christina Maslach, she's a leading burnout researcher. And she says it's not just about, being resilient or managing your stress. It's often a problem with the workplace itself.
That's interesting. I always thought of burnout as a personal thing,
It can feel that way, but if you look at it as a group issue, well, it changes how you deal with it.
Right.
Instead of asking yourself, what's wrong with me, you ask, what's wrong with this environment?
I like that shift.
And HBR even linked an article that goes deeper, looks at why burnout happens and what leaders can do to create better, healthier workplaces.
That is so important. Can't just keep putting Band-Aids on a bigger problem. Okay, last but not least, the final tip in this collection of career wisdom. What have we got?
Tip number 10 takes us beyond just our own careers.
Okay,
It asks us to think about how businesses fit into society, the big picture.
that's a great point. What kind of shift are we talking about here?
It's this idea of shared value that Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter talks about.
Shared value, okay.
He says that a company's success, it's tied to how well society is doing.
So it's not just about profits for shareholders.
Right. Porter challenges that traditional view.
Interesting.
He says you have to think about everyone, employees, customers, communities, even the environment.
It's like what we were saying before, right? It's not just about doing good to feel good. It's realizing that a company can't really succeed in the long run if the community around it is struggling.
Exactly. And if you're interested in diving deeper into this, HBR has a whole bunch of related articles.
Oh, cool.
Leadership, managing people, strategy, communication, all these skills that help you build a career that you can be proud of, one that actually makes a difference.
This deep dive has been amazing. So many great ideas. I feel like I've got this whole new toolbox for my career now.
I'm glad to hear that. And as we wrap up these 10 timeless tips from Harvard Business Review, I think there's one big idea that ties everything together.
What's that?
Never stop learning, never stop growing.
It's funny, every expert we've talked about, CEOs, professors, even that Oscar-winning director, they've all said how important it is to embrace challenges, to push yourself, to keep learning new things.
It's true. It's not about climbing that corporate ladder. It's about becoming a better, more adaptable you.
Yeah, I love that. It's not about the outside stuff, it's about the inside.
And that's where the real change happens. When you focus on learning, you unlock your potential, open up new possibilities, and you find a career that really means something.
Out of all these tips, which one resonated with you the most? What's the one thing you'd want our listeners to take away from all this?
For me, it goes back to that first tip, aligning your work with what you believe in. When your career is a reflection of who you are, your passions, your purpose, well, it stops being just a job. It becomes a source of energy, inspiration, and real fulfillment.
That's a powerful thought. And it ties in so well with that last tip, the shared value idea. Creating a positive impact, not just for yourself, but for everyone.
Exactly. When you find that place where your passions meet the needs of the world, that's when things get really exciting.
So for everyone listening, we have a question for you. What stood out to you from these 10 tips? What's one little thing you can do today to start making your career more aligned with your values, your goals?
Remember, a fulfilling career, it's not about reaching some finish line.
Right.
It's about enjoying the journey, learning, growing, and making a real difference along the way.
This has been such a fantastic deep dive. Thank you so much for taking us through these timeless insights from Harvard Business Review.
It was my pleasure. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep making your mark on the world. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.